Welcome to Off the Page Reviews, a channel dedicated to talking into the void about whatever book I happen to be reading. The following review will contain spoilers. There are two kinds of people in the world of Red Queen, the Reds and the Silvers. They are differentiated by the color of their blood. Reds have red blood and are by all accounts normal humans. Silvers have silver blood, and it comes with fantastic powers. They can control fire or water, grow plants, have super strength, or have several kinds of telepathy, just to name a few. The Silvers hold all the money and all the power. Reds live in slavery in all but name. This isn't a channel where I intend to do a lot of talking about politics, but I also understand that current events and culture are influenced by, and in turn influence each other. This book was published in 2015, when the current U.S. president was campaigning on a racist, xenophobic, fascist, white nationalist platform. In short, a white man born to wealth and privilege, telling people of color and the poor how grateful they should be. Very much like the Silvers think the Reds should be grateful for the privilege of serving. The story isn't new. It's been told and retold for generations. The powerful oppressing the weak can be seen across time, generations, and genre. And of course, this is because it is a common theme in history. From Rome and its treatment of non-Romans, to the British Empire and its disregard for the non-British, to the United States slave trade, and many, many more. Humans are tribal, and we divide ourselves along arbitrary lines of perceived differences, so this theme showing up in fiction is just as common. That said, the first story that comes to my mind was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. It is a personal favorite. In Red Rising, society is divided by colors as well, with reds being the lowest level and gold being the highest. A red by the name of Darrow is plucked from the mines of Mars and transformed into gold, to rise in the ranks and break society down from the inside. Now, Red Rising is science fiction fantasy. Red Queen is young adult romance. Red Rising is decidedly more violent. Red Queen has implied, sanitized violence. There are instances of torture, but even the final battle is relatively clean. Red Rising starts with 2 whippings, a hanging, a suicide, and a song, and it turns into a bloodbath from there. So I'm trying to keep in mind that despite the similar aesthetics, they are different genres and meant for different audiences. So with that ridiculously long introduction out of the way, our main character is Mare Borrow. She lives in a town not far from the summer capital called the Stilts, because all the houses are on stilts. She has 3 older brothers who have been shipped off to war, a father with failing health thanks to his own war wounds, a younger sister with a talent for sewing silk, and a mother who's trying to keep it all together. After a family tragedy, with her own conscription looming, Mare picks the pocket of a man calling himself Cal. The next day she is called to service at the palace, where she promptly proves that Reds have powers too. This is a problem for the Silvers. Reds having superpowers would disrupt the balance of society that heavily favors the Silvers. The king and queen are quick to put her on lockdown, concocting a fake identity and marrying her off to their youngest son. She also meets Cal again, who is, of course, the crown prince. Because that is how young adult romance works. This brings us to the bulk of the story, with Mare trying to navigate a world of politics she knows nothing about and has no reason to trust any of the players, even those who seem to have her best interest at heart. First we have Cal, the main love interest. This is a classic I love him though he is my enemy trope. And it's done pretty well. They definitely call each other on their shit while clearly fighting feelings they know they should not have. It's cute. Their biggest issue is that Cal has been raised to take the throne and maintain the status quo, keeping Silver in power over Red, which means keeping Mare's people in poverty. The Queen is a straight-laced villain. She's a whisperer, which means her power is mind rape. She can invade anyone's mind and make them do anything she wants, up to and including murder or suicide. And she's perfectly happy to use these powers to achieve her ends. Kinda begs the question why her people aren't ruling everything or haven't been slaughtered on general principle. Evangeline is Cal's betrothed. She's a classic mean girl, rich, spoiled, and handpicked to be the next queen because of her power. She's a minor antagonist that I think will probably come back into play later, but for this story she mostly functions as a mirror for Mare. Then we have the second prince, Mare's betrothed, Cal's younger half-brother, Maven. If you have read this sort of story, you know exactly who this character is. Maven is perfect. Literally. He always says and does the right thing. Everyone says he's his mother's son, the shadow to Cal's flame. I actually said to a friend within a few chapters of Maven's introduction, "Curse your sudden and inevitable betrayal," and I was not disappointed. Then there's Diana Farley, the highest-ranking member of the Scarlet Guard rebellion that we meet in this book. The rebellion exists, but it doesn't have much influence on the story and is much less effective than it could be. On their own, they bomb a few empty buildings and make some propaganda videos that really do more harm than good. So this brings me to my questions. Keep in mind that Red Queen is the only book I have read in this series at this point, and some of these questions have answers I just have not gotten to yet. They are not an indictment on the book. They are just my thoughts going forward and what I hope to have answered in later books. Here are my questions. Why are the Reds on the front line? And how are the mind rapists not running the world? Let's start with the first. Short of being physical bodies, what purpose do the Reds serve on the front line? Now I'm asking having only read the first book, in which we never see the front line, and the war exists only as an existential threat to help move the plot along. However, I'm still curious from a world-building standpoint. War isn't won by boots on the ground. It's won by forcing your opponent into a position where they're unwilling or unable to continue fighting. In the time of feudal lords, boots on the ground was the way to go. It was a matter of having more human resources to throw at the problem than the other guy. But with the advancement of technology, we don't do that anymore. The ethics of drone warfare aside, a single Predator drone is cheaper, more efficient, and more effective than a battalion of conscripted soldiers. The same principle applies here. For every Red soldier on the field, they need food, water, clothing, boots, weapons, equipment to maintain those weapons, ammunition, and all the fuel, vehicles, and logistics to move all of those bodies and equipment around. Alternatively, you could send someone like Evangeline who can turn all the metal around her into an army of stabby spider mecha. And that's not to say I can't see use for Red soldiers, just not on the front line. Assuming the other kingdoms have a similar caste system, Reds would make great spies. They could easily slip into society, even into the palace, and move unnoticed. But let's stick a pin in that thought. Moving to the next question. There are two different silvers with the powers of mind control. Singers and whisperers. Singers can look in someone's eyes, and whatever suggestion they make, no matter how ridiculous, sounds perfectly reasonable. They basically turn people into meat puppets. Whisperers are just straight-up mind rape. They can seize control of your mind and body and make you do whatever they want against your will. So why have neither of these families taken over the world or been slaughtered out of existence? Mind control is one of those powers that has a tendency to be world-breaking if not implemented carefully. In this case, the only power shown that can counter a whisperer or a singer is a silence, who has the power to neutralize the ability of other silvers. But it seems to be proximity-based. The only silence we see in Red Queen is Arvin, and he's on the side of the Queen. And the King and Queen had a son, Maven, so presumably they had relations on at least one occasion, as also it is implied that on more than one occasion, a queen has murdered a king on the wedding night. So did Arvin stand next to the bed with his back politely turned to make sure no one murdered anyone else? And if so, why? I'm probably overthinking it at this point, and that should be left to fanfic writers. Back on topic. Here's the thing. Mayor's tutor, and probably only real friend in the palace, is a singer. He's also Cal's uncle, and straight up lampshades the fact that many people believe his sister used her powers to become the first queen. But no one seems concerned about the woman who can walk into the room and make all the guards and king murder themselves. And the queen's plan is unnecessarily convoluted. She becomes queen, has a child, waits for that child to grow up, so she can displace the heir with her own child and rule by proxy. She definitely could have consulted Octum about his razor. Make the king off himself, rule the kingdom, and anyone who objects, well, they can commit suicide too. Why the Whispers didn't do this generations ago is a mystery. Now here's where these two questions intersect. Why wasn't Mare screened when she came to work at the palace? The country is at war. There's a rebellion among the Reds. There's an entire family of people who can read minds. But she walks onto the job and is allowed to serve food and drinks to the highest-ranking families in the kingdom. All of these people should be dead. One enemy red spy slipped into the castle could poison everyone's food. How they have an active member of the rebellion working on staff for apparently years without anyone noticing. Both the rebellion and the Silvers fail in this case. The rebellion should have poisoned a lot of them by now and been done. The Silvers should absolutely be screening every person that serves them on a regular basis to make sure they are loyal. I'm going to stock this one on my second shelf. It is a good book. The story is solid, with good characters and a nice flow. But as I said earlier, you've heard this story before, and everyone stays in their lane. The Queen is an evil schemer who schemes because that is the role she is supposed to play, even though her particular power set would make a much more direct approach easier. Likewise, there is a rebellion of Reds, but they don't do anything to make themselves look morally gray in any way. Thank you for your time. I know everyone's mileage will vary, so feel free to leave your thoughts.